My name is Amber, I'm 38, and I came home to find my 8-year-old daughter being forced to scrub floors by my in-laws while they took their real granddaughter to an amusement park. Before I tell you what happened next, and how one single sentence at a fancy restaurant blew up their entire world, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It all started when my work trip ended 2 days early. I was so excited to surprise my husband, Scott, and especially my daughter, Madison. I walked through the front door expecting to hear the TV or Madison's laughter. Instead, there was just silence. A strange, heavy silence that was punctuated by a faint scrubbing sound and the sharp, chemical smell of cleaning products. My blood ran cold. I followed the sound to the kitchen. And there she was. My sweet, 8-year-old daughter, on her hands and knees, with a giant yellow sponge in her tiny, red hands. Tears were silently streaming down her face as she scrubbed a spot on the linoleum floor that was already perfectly clean. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. A strange, icy calm washed over me. The kind of calm you feel in the moments before a hurricane makes landfall. I knelt down, gently took the sponge from her hand, and pulled her into my arms. She just collapsed against me, her little body trembling with quiet sobs. "Sweetheart, where is Grandma? Where is Grandpa?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She buried her face in my shoulder. They went to the park," she mumbled. "With Lily. Why didn't they take you?" Her next words felt like a punch to the gut. "Grandma said, she said I had to be punished for spilling my juice. She said I needed to learn my place. Learn her place." The dam of my composure finally broke, but no sound came out. I just held her tighter, rocking her back and forth on the cold kitchen floor. This wasn't new, not really. It was just the loudest and cruelest it had ever been. We adopted Madison when she was a baby. She is my daughter. She is Scott's daughter. He legally adopted her. She is our entire world. But to his parents, Eleanor and Robert, she was an add-on. A footnote. I remember last Christmas. Lily, my niece, got a 3-story dollhouse that took up half the living room. Madison got a sweater that was clearly from a clearance rack, still with the wrinkly sale sticker on the tag. At the time, Scott just sighed and said, "You know my parents. They're a little old-fashioned." But this wasn't old-fashioned. This was abuse. I cleaned Madison up, bandaged a little raw spot on her knuckle, and we sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, eating ice cream straight from the tub. She told me everything. How for the last 3 days, she'd been left alone while they took Lily out for treats. How she had to do chores while Lily watched cartoons. How Eleanor had looked at her that morning and said, "It's a shame, but blood is thicker than water." When Scott got home from work an hour later, the color drained from his face. He saw Madison's red hands, the tear tracks on her cheeks, and the look in my eyes. He didn't need me to say a word. I saw the guilt warring with a white-hot fury on his face. He'd been downplaying his parents' behavior for years, always making excuses. But there were no more excuses left. He knelt in front of Madison and his voice was thick with emotion. "I am so sorry, sweetie," he said, pulling her into a hug. "I didn't protect you. That will never, ever happen again." It wasn't just a promise. It was a vow. A few hours later, the front door opened, and in walked Eleanor and Robert, laughing about something they'd seen at the park. They stopped dead when they saw me sitting on the couch. "Amber! You're back early," Eleanor said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I stood up. "Where were you, Eleanor?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "We took Lily to the park. She had a wonderful time," she said, completely oblivious. "Why was Madison left here alone, scrubbing the floor?" Scott asked, stepping in front of me. His voice was low and tight. Eleanor actually scoffed. "We were teaching her responsibility. She made a mess." "A mess?" She's a child, Mom. She spilled juice. Scott's voice rose. You left an 8-year-old home alone as punishment. That's when Robert, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, but not in the way you'd expect. He looked at Scott with frustration. You don't understand. I'm trying to protect this family's future. It was a bizarre thing to say, and it just hung in the air for a second. Eleanor, sensing she was losing control, went for the jugular. She looked right at me and said the words that sealed her fate. Frankly, blood is thicker than water. She's not our real granddaughter. The silence that followed was deafening. Scott looked at his mother as if he'd never seen her before. The last thread of loyalty, of obligation, just snapped. He was the one who spoke first. You've chosen your blood, he said, his voice shaking with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. Now we're choosing our family. I want you to pack your things, and I want you to get out of my house. I stood by his side, put my hand on his back, and just nodded. We were a team. The two of them stood there, mouths opening and closing like fish, utterly shocked that their power had just evaporated. The next morning, just as I knew it would, my phone started ringing off the hook. Then Scott's phone. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all calling to tell us how ungrateful and disrespectful we were. Eleanor had been busy, spinning her tale of the overly sensitive daughter-in-law and the ungrateful son who had thrown his loving parents out on the street. The pressure was immense. Scott was pacing the living room, torn apart. They're my parents, Amber. How could they do this to a child? To our child? I held him. We're in this together, I promised. We'll handle them. It was during that conversation that he mentioned something that made the gears in my head start to turn. It's just so weird, he said. For the last month, Dad has been constantly asking about your new project at work. The Genesis project. He seemed almost desperate. And that's when it all clicked into place. The Genesis project was my baby. A massive, company-wide initiative I was leading. And my father-in-law's small construction company was one of dozens of local firms bidding for a lucrative subcontract. His protecting the family's future line suddenly made a horrifying kind of sense. He wasn't just being cruel, he was trying to curry favor with me, in his own twisted, manipulative way. I looked at the calendar. That very night was a formal dinner for potential project partners. The host? My CEO, Mr. Henderson. Robert and Eleanor would be there, ready to network and schmooze. We're going to that dinner, I told Scott, a plan forming in my mind. And we're going together. We're not going to hide. We're not going to let them control the narrative. We're just going to be ourselves. He looked at me, saw the resolve in my eyes, and nodded. The restaurant was exactly what you'd expect, low lighting, clinking glasses, and the low hum of important conversations. We found our table, and I could feel Robert and Eleanor's eyes on us from across the room. Robert was, of course, hovering near Mr. Henderson's table, waiting for his moment. After a while, Eleanor decided she couldn't help herself. She sauntered over, a fake, sugary smile plastered on her face. She directed her words to Mr. Henderson, who was making his rounds and had stopped by our table. It's just so wonderful Amber is so successful, she said, her voice dripping with poison. She's a wonderful mother to her little adopted girl. Family is just the most important thing, isn't it, Mr. Henderson? This was it. The moment of truth. I smiled back, just as sweetly. Thank you, Eleanor. You're right. Family is everything. And I believe the values we hold in our family, like integrity, trust, and basic human decency, are the same values we should look for in our business partners. I then turned my full attention to my boss. Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice clear and professional. Speaking of integrity, it's the absolute cornerstone of the Genesis project. Based on some new information that has recently come to my attention regarding character and judgment, I believe we need to conduct a much deeper due diligence process on all potential partners, including Mr. Wilson's company, to ensure they are fully aligned with our corporate values. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get emotional. I simply stated a professional concern. The effect was instantaneous. A chill fell over the table. Robert, who had been making his way over, froze mid-step. His face went from confident to ashen in a heartbeat. Mr. Henderson, a shrewd and perceptive leader, understood immediately. He didn't need the details. He trusted me. He gave me a slight, serious nod. An excellent point, Amber. Thank you for your diligence. Then he looked past me, his eyes landing on my father-in-law. Mr. Wilson, he said, his voice cool and dismissive. Perhaps we'll postpone our discussion indefinitely. The public humiliation was absolute. It wasn't a loud explosion. It was a silent, devastating implosion of Robert's hopes, right there in front of his peers. In the parking lot, they tried to stop us. Panic was etched all over their faces. Amber, wait! Robert pleaded. But this time, Scott stepped in front of me. He looked at his father, not with anger anymore, but with a kind of sad finality. This was never about business, Dad, he said, his voice steady. This was about my daughter. You tried to use my wife for a business deal while my mother was emotionally abusing my child. You made your choice. Now we're making ours. He looked from his father to his mother. We're done. Don't call Madison. Don't call us. And with that, he opened the car door for me. We got in, and we drove away, and we didn't look back. The 3 months that followed were quiet and healing. We didn't just move on, we actively rebuilt. We started creating a book together, the three of us. We called it the Wilson Family Charter. We filled it with pictures and inside jokes, and we wrote down our own rules. Rule number 1, love is what makes a family. Rule number 2, we always listen to and protect each other. Rule number 3, Friday night is always pizza and movie night. No exceptions. Watching Madison laugh as she drew a big, lopsided heart next to rule number 1, I knew we had made the right choice. Her confidence started to blossom. She was lighter, freer. Last week, I was sitting in the living room, watching the moonlight stream through the window. My gaze fell on our charter, sitting on the coffee table. I used to think family was something you were born into, something you were stuck with. But I know now that isn't true. A true family is a fortress. It's a fortress you build yourself, brick by brick, choosing every person you let inside. It's a fortress you have to be willing to defend, no matter the cost. Thank you guys so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I felt like I had to. My question for you all is, have you ever had to choose between the family you were born into and the family you've built? Let me know your experiences in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please give this video a like and subscribe for more. It really does help.